They didn't even let me finish service. It was a Friday night, full house, 42 open tabs, and the line was running hot when Eli, the new general manager, tapped my shoulder and asked me to step into the office. I thought maybe it was a vendor issue. Maybe one of the fish deliveries came in spoiled again. I didn't expect to see our owner, Martin Vance, sitting stiffly at my desk. "Alex," he said, not unkindly. "We're making some changes." I stood there in my apron, knife still in my back pocket. "My name is Alex DeWitt. For 12 years, I was executive chef of Bastion, a restaurant that helped turn a crumbling corner of downtown Charleston into one of the most vibrant food districts in the South. 12 years of building a kitchen from scratch. 12 years of perfect reviews, full bookings, mentoring cooks who now ran kitchens of their own. I'd never missed a dinner service, not once." Martin slid a folder toward me. "We've brought in a culinary director," he said. "Someone with a more modern vision." I didn't touch the folder. Eli stepped in. "He's done consulting for some big names in New York, and we think he can take Bastion to the next level." I stared at the cheap motivational poster Martin had tacked above the desk. Great things never come from comfort zones. The irony stung. "This is how you tell me," Martin sighed. "We wanted to give you a chance to step back, decompress. You've been in the weeds for a long time." "No thanks," I wanted to say. But I didn't speak. "You'll get 4 months severance," Eli added. Generous, all things considered, all things considered. I'd named the damn restaurant. When we opened, Bastion was a 38-seat risk with wobbly tables and a brick pizza oven that barely held temperature. Now we were reservation only, booked out for weeks, with 2 James Beard semifinalist nods and a line that ran tighter than any kitchen in the region. They handed me the check, the folder, and a signed card from the team. Half the signatures were people I'd hired. I didn't read the messages. I walked out through the back door, past the sous, past the pastry chef I'd taught to make pâte à choux from scratch, past the walk-in cooler that still had my personal spice blends labeled in black Sharpie. No goodbyes. I didn't go home. I went to the beach. It was almost midnight. The tide was low. I sat barefoot on the damp sand, still in my chef's coat, still smelling of oil and shallots, and watched a cargo ship slide silently across the horizon. For the first time in over a decade, I had nowhere to be at 7 a.m. the next day. They'd replaced me with some buzzword-slinging consultant. I knew the type: dehydrated seaweed garnishes and foie gras foam, Instagrammable plates with no soul. But Martin didn't care about soul anymore. He wanted to be elevated. Back when Bastion opened, he used to talk about food as memory. Now he talked about optimization. He once told a food critic that he liked my food because it wasn't trying too hard. I guess that wasn't enough anymore. I sat there until the sky lightened to a soft gray. When I finally stood, I knew 3 things. 1. I would not go back. 2. They would call. 3. And when they did, I would already be somewhere better. The next morning, I shaved, brewed a strong pot of coffee, and turned off my phone. It stayed off for the next 3 days. When I finally turned it back on, there were 6 messages. 1 from Eli, 2 from the sous chef, Matt, 1 from a local food blogger asking for a comment, and 1 from my sister, who just texted, "Whatever happened, I'm on your side." The last message was a voicemail from my old mentor, Chef Roslyn. Just her saying, "Call me when you've slept off the fire." I didn't call anyone back. Instead, I drove out to the north end of the peninsula, where an old bakery had been sitting empty for the better part of a year. I knew the owner. More accurately, I knew his daughter, Lena. She and I had worked together when I first moved to Charleston, back when I was slicing onions for $11 an hour and she was saving up to study ceramics in Tokyo. The sign in the window said "for lease." I walked in and called out. No answer, but I heard a radio playing jazz in the back. I found Lena in the former prep kitchen, elbows deep in clay. "Figured you'd show up," she said without looking up. "Heard the Bastion thing. Guess word travels fast. This town doesn't have secrets. It has echo chambers." She offered me coffee, French press, over-extracted, and asked what I was thinking. I don't want a restaurant, I told her. Not yet, so, I want to cook. Just not for them. She nodded slowly, wiping her hands on a rag. There's still a gas line. Walk-ins busted, but I think the burners work. I spent the next 4 hours scrubbing counters, checking outlets, resealing the back door. Lena watched me from her corner, occasionally throwing in a sarcastic comment. By sunset, the place smelled faintly of bleach, citrus, and possibilities. That night, I posted a single message to my personal Instagram. A photo of a cast iron pan with nothing in it. The caption, "Open fire soon. Stay hungry." The next day, I reached out to 5 people. Not suppliers, not critics, people. The ones who'd worked side by side with me at Bastion before Martin brought in consultants and spreadsheets. The ones who still believed in real food, not concepts. 2 called back immediately. One was Matt. "She's already changed the menu," he said, voice low. "She put cauliflower steak on the Saturday board. What about the lamb shoulder? Gone." Said it was too rustic. I thanked him. Didn't say more. On Friday, I invited 6 people to dinner. No press, no hashtags. Just an old kitchen, a borrowed table, and one rule: eat slow, no photos. I cooked what I loved. No plating guides, just food. Sea bass with tarragon oil. Hand-twisted pasta with brown butter. A tart with blood orange and sea salt. Everything served family style, on mismatched plates from Lena's old catering stash. The next morning, 3 of them messaged me. "When's the next one?" I didn't answer right away. I needed time, not for cooking, for control. Meanwhile, the Bastion team started to slip. Quietly, Matt texted again 2 weeks later. New guy added a cucumber air mousse. It collapsed mid-service. Then, critic came in last night. Didn't finish his entree. Then, she's asking for old menus. Says the new concept is confusing diners. I smiled. Confusion was just the beginning. They thought I'd vanished. But I was just seasoning the pan. By the 3rd dinner, we had to split into 2 tables. I didn't post anything. Didn't even send invites. Word got around the old-fashioned way. Whispered between industry folks. Passed between regulars like a shared secret. No name. No website. Just Friday night at the bakery. The kind of place you only find if someone trusts you enough to tell you. Lena handled the space, candles and place settings, and poured wine like she'd been doing it forever. I cooked solo. No sous, no expeditor, no line cooks shouting, "Yes, chef." Just rhythm, fire, hands. They paid in envelopes. Whatever they thought the night was worth. One of the guests, a former food critic turned travel writer, slipped me hers at the end of a dinner and whispered, "This is what Charleston forgot." I smiled, but didn't answer. I was too busy thinking about how much they'd pay at Bastion for a night that honest. Then, the rumor hit. Someone claimed I was behind a new concept restaurant called Ember and Root. I wasn't, but I didn't correct it. Let them chase ghosts. Bastion, meanwhile, was fumbling its new identity. Eli had replaced the rustic hand-lettered chalkboard menu with an iPad kiosk. The servers hated it, so did the regulars. But the new chef, Jasper, said it was more on brand. Matt told me a couple sent back the signature duck dish last Saturday. Undercooked and over-smoked, they said. Martin tried to spin it as forward-thinking flavor theory. He even launched a limited tasting menu, but forgot that people in this city don't like being talked down to by their dinner. 1 week later, the critic returned. I didn't hear about the review until Lena read it aloud to me the next morning, laughing into her coffee. "Bastion's new menu reads like a culinary resume more than a meal," she recited. "Its flavors are interesting, but cold. Beautiful, but distant. Like someone cooking from a catalog of techniques, not a love of food." They got 2 stars. Down from 4, Martin panicked. Matt said he called an emergency staff meeting and asked everyone to recapture the original spirit. He even suggested bringing back one of Chef Alex's old dishes. The irony burned like cayenne. That same week, Lena's landlord sent us an offer. Buy the space, or he'd lease it to a storage company. I had 24 hours to decide. I didn't hesitate. I called a former regular, Jules Ashcroft, now an investor in 3 of the top 10 bistros in Savannah, and told her I had a space, a vision, and no interest in compromise. She wired the down payment that afternoon, and just like that, the bakery wasn't a borrowed kitchen anymore. It was mine. That Friday night, 16 people came. The following week, 28, we stopped calling it dinner. It was a gathering, a return, something deeper than food. They came because it felt like something real, something dying in restaurants that chased attention over connection. Then, Matt showed up, not to eat, to work. He handed me his apron without a word and walked straight into the kitchen. I didn't ask if he'd quit Bastion. I just passed him a cutting board and said, "Hope you remember how to julienne fennel." He grinned. We didn't need to say anything else. By mid-spring, the Friday gatherings had a waitlist, not from hype. There was no promotion, no reservation system, no mention in Charleston Table or any of the online food indexes. But people talked, and people whispered louder than ads. We started calling the space marrow. A quiet joke Lena made that stuck. Something about what's left when the bones are boiled down. Essential, deep, not for show. Matt came in every Friday after his last Bastion shift. He didn't say much about the place at first, just chopped, cleaned, plated. But I started noticing bruises on his forearms. Kitchen stress, too much line pressure, not enough leadership. One night after service, he stayed behind and finished a bottle of red we'd forgotten to pour. "They're drowning," he said quietly. "It's like watching a ship sink from the inside." Apparently, Bastion had gone full concept mode. Their Spring Awakening menu was built around edible flowers and dehydrated carrot filigree. Meanwhile, their suppliers were getting swapped out for cheaper bulk orders. The duck was dry now. The pastry chef had quit. 2 of the line cooks had walked mid-service. Eli was fielding complaints nightly, and Jasper, the culinary messiah from Manhattan, was pursuing other ventures as of that morning. "They're reaching out to freelancers," Matt added, "trying to find anyone who can restore the Bastion experience." I didn't laugh. I just poured him another glass. That Monday, I got an email, subject line, "Urgent, consulting offer, from Alivance at bastionhospitalitygroup.com." The body was formal. An invitation to advise on a relaunch strategy. Generous pay, flexible terms, full creative control, they claimed. I closed it without replying. Instead, I opened another message I'd nearly missed. From a woman named Vera Liu, Director of Operations at the Table South, an upscale hospitality group known for letting chefs run wild. She said she'd heard about marrow through one of our guests, an actor, apparently, and asked if I'd be open to a conversation. I replied, "I'm listening." We met 2 days later. She flew down from Atlanta, no entourage, no ego. Just a notebook, a hunger for something different, and a calm kind of confidence I hadn't seen in a while. "I'm not here to ask you to franchise marrow," she said over lunch. "I'm here to ask what it could be if it didn't have to hide." I didn't answer right away. I was still thinking about her phrasing. Didn't have to hide. What we had wasn't a restaurant. It was closer to a movement, a rebellion. The idea of scaling it felt dangerous, but also tempting. Later that night, I told Lena, "Could be a trap," she said, "stacking clean plates in our tiny dish pit. Could also be your next fire." We sat with that for a while. Meanwhile, Bastion continued slipping. They rolled out a heritage throwback menu, resurrecting 3 of my old dishes, word for word, plating for plating. I only knew because Matt texted me a photo. They didn't even try to hide it. Martin posted some long-winded caption about returning to our roots and respecting the history of flavor. A desperate move, dressed in nostalgia. He still hadn't called me, but Eli did again. This time, from his personal cell. "Martin's thinking of selling," he said without preamble, "to a group out of Miami." I said nothing. but there's another offer on the table. Pause. From someone who used to be part of Bastion's heart. I hung up. It was the first time since I left that I felt anger. Not rage. Something colder. Something clearer. They hadn't just underestimated me. They'd forgotten I built the bones they were now gnawing on. The offer came 2 weeks later, slid across the table in a crisp folder over lunch at the Dewberry. Not from Eli. Not from Martin. From Martin's lawyer. A formal proposal. By Bastion. Full rights. Real estate. IP. Brand. Staff negotiable. The terms were insultingly generous. A fire sale, disguised as a dignified exit. I could see the panic in the legal language. The drop in revenue. The sudden wave of online complaints. The former investors quietly pulling out. They thought I'd want it back. That I'd jump at the chance to retake my kingdom. But Bastion wasn't my kingdom anymore. It was a ghost town built on memory. One they'd already tried to sell without me. Still, I didn't decline. I just said, I'll think about it. That same night, we held the 20th Marrow dinner. Lena surprised me with new hand-thrown serving bowls. Matt built a two-top banquet in the front window with reclaimed wood from an old dock. We served local snapper with black lime, ricotta stuffed squash blossoms, and a roasted pear galette that made one guest cry. Quietly, halfway through dessert, I didn't want to own Bastion again, but I knew someone who did. Vera, she called the next day. We're ready if you are. So we bought it, not for the name, but for the location. The bones, the memories still locked in the brick and mortar. 3 weeks later, Bastion closed, for reimagining. The press release was vague, full of hospitality speak about transitioning vision. Martin vanished. Eli went silent. I heard he moved to Asheville. Jasper opened a pop-up in Miami, made it 6 weeks, and I didn't return as executive chef. I came back as advisor to a young woman named Neve who trained under Matt and cooked with the quiet fire I once had in my 20s. I let her lead. We renamed the Space Foundry. No reclaimed nostalgia, no pretense, just open flame, honest food, and staff who cared more about each other than critics. On opening night, we didn't invite press. We invited farmers, dishwashers, the guy who roasted our coffee beans, and the pastry chef who never got credit for the rye shortbread Bastion once sold as theirs. They filled the space. They laughed, they cried, they toasted, and I stood in the back, out of sight, sipping a glass of wine from a paper cup. I hadn't come back to reclaim a throne, I'd come to set fire to what thrones meant. A week later, I walked past Bastion's old sign in the alley. Someone had scratched a line through the name. Underneath, in Sharpie, someone had written, "Not gone. Just evolved." I smiled. Not at the graffiti, at what it meant. Success isn't staying where they put you. It's building your own fire, and knowing how to keep it lit.